right, Michael, it's time for our very first matchup of the day. Two top teams, one of which is TSM. I didn't mean to alliterate. Head into this match. We've got the third place Spacestation versus the fourth place TSM. Both of these teams tend to historically be in the top of the NA League. It was kind of dicey for TSM at the start, but they've seemingly found their groove. We're going to Oregon. What are your basic expectations for this match?
Well, obviously, Parker, both these teams know this map really well. I mean, you could say what you want about the, the wins, losses, about, who's actually better on Oregon more recently, and there's a little bit to go into. TSM have been losing on Oregon quite a lot, whereas if you look at Space Station, they haven't really played it that much. They played it like once against Astralis. They won it. But I honestly think this is Oregon. It's everyone knows how to play the map. There's not going to be a lot of confusion going into that. So the way they match up in terms of that map preference is not a major factor. I think the major factor is what you were just talking about, Parker. It's the performance so far through this stage. We've seen some trips actually from both of these teams. I can't really give the edge to either because today is the dawn of a new week since we've seen these teams play, and I think they'll have moved a lot since then.
Well, before we get into the matchup, let's talk about the community poll for our very first game. It involves two of the top performers right now in the North American League. Rampy enters the day in 4th, Merc enters the day in 6th, and the question is quite simple. With Rampy and Merc both top 5 in the league for KPR, who will nab the most kills today? Now, my rating, by the way, was going off of Siege GG's individual player ratings, so they might be top 5 for kills per round, which is what KPR stands for. But as a duo, if you want to call them that, they sit in 4th and 6th. So you can go and vote on our socials if you'd like. Vote for Rampy or Merc. Michael, this matchup is very top heavy in terms of the ratings. 7 players in this lobby are currently in the top 20 of the North American League. Rampy in 4th, Hot and Cold in 5th, Merc in 6th, Bolo in 8th, Fulton 14th, 18th is achieved, and Geo is 20th. Just outside of the top 20 is Bosco, the only player that hasn't had a very good statistical season in this lobby is Chala, and no doubt a part of that is the role swap that we've seen. But based on what we've witnessed of TSM so far, while Chala's personal stats have suffered, do you think that it has made TSM a more well-rounded team, moving him and Geo into different roles?
That's the thing, Parker. When we're talking specifically about TSM, one of the most interesting things about them as a team is they've always had the hype. They've always had the fans. They've always had the momentum behind them in the public eye. They've not always been a good team. I'll be frank about that. We've seen a lot of instances of TSM just losing constantly and struggling to get a win. You go back a few stages and it could be pretty rough. But that's what calls in, I think, so much attention when you have a stage like the one we have right now where TSM started off pretty rough. But I want to say that what we have from TSM currently, in terms of the way they've set up their roles, the way they've got their players already, is one of the best iterations of TSM we've ever seen. You got to keep in mind, the losses they've had so far through this stage, that's against OXG in the first Playday, who is the first seed currently in the NAL. The other loss, that's against DZ. I'm not surprised by that. It was an 8-6. There's so much potential, I think, with the current lineup of TSM and the current setup for their roles. And yeah, Chala's taken one for the team, but I think it's going to enable the rest of his players.
That loss to Dark Zero, by the way, Michael, was on this map. So that'll be something for us to watch because TSM and DZ fought here on Playday number 4. And funny enough, both of these teams played Oregon on Playday number 4. It's the only time that either of them have played it thus far in this stage of the North American League. SSG prevailed 7-2 over Astralis. Dark Zero prevailed in overtime. Go figure, over TSM by a score of 8-6. Since then, TSM has gone on a win streak of 1 game. Astralis having a rough one, losing to SSG in Playday number 4 and then losing to TSM in Playday 5. SSG is on a 2-game win streak coming in here. And I mean, if you look at the strength of schedule that's remaining, because there are SI implications on the line for these teams. The one team that seems secured at this spot is OXG, and unless, the wheels fall off of the Sonics, the likelihood that they make it to SI is quite high as well.
Yeah.
But TSM, DZ, and SSG are in a dogfight for 2 of those final spots. And the question is, which one doesn't make it? Well, after this SSG TSM matchup, TSM plays the Sonics, the team currently in 2nd place, next week. Then TSM plays XSET, one of the bottom teams, and then plays Mirage, another one of the bottom teams. In fact, as of today, Mirage are in 8th and XSET is in 9th. That means that TSM is ending this stage by playing the 2 weakest teams. That's excellent if you're a fan of TSM, because the likelihood of them picking up wins in both of those games should be quite high. But we also saw XSET upset the Sonics not too long ago. So the question then becomes, is it really that easy going for TSM? SSG's strength of schedule moving forward is they play Dark Zero next week, so both TSM and SSG have a top team on their hands. Spacestation then plays Beast Coast in Playday number 8, and then ends Playday 9 against XSET. And I think the real loser here is XSET with those 2 matchups, but more importantly, it's a relatively even between both SSG and TSM in regards to what games they have remaining.
Yeah, it's pretty even split. And again, as you mentioned, a lot of the weaker teams for both teams, or both SSG and TSM, going into the later half of this split. So the most important thing is this match here and now. We can't really, build up the importance of TSM versus SSG any more than we already have. When you consider the future matches to come, it's no-brainer. This is going to be kind of the changing of the gears for one of these squads. They're going to start their trajectory towards getting those top spots in the NAL, and the other one is going to have to fight just a little bit harder to probably come just below whoever wins this. So this is a very significant match for both SSG and TSM. And from what we've seen, we talked about the future, we talked about the past. What we've seen on everything we know, honestly, this is a really difficult match to predict. I really don't think that the map is going to be a key consideration here. Usually this is where we kind of shift our gears and talk about the performance on this map. Yes, SSG performs better on Oregon through this stage, but it's really, I don't think it's going to be a major consideration, and we can't always convert past performance against different teams on the same map to a match where you have TSM versus SSG. It's not the same. So going into this, expectations are high, pressure is high, and you know that both of these squads are going to have to give their all.
Also would like to issue a small correction. I was talking about the upcoming major, not SI. My brain flip-flopped and I completely forgot about.
Well, I mean, there's points on the line too, I guess.
There's only 4 the point I was trying to make is that there's only 4 teams going to the major, right, and they're fighting for 4 spots, right? Yeah, so the point that I made was because I thought it was SI, but then I realized that we still have a major to go.
Yeah,
before we get there. So
it's okay, it happens.
It's
again, the points are a thing. So
the points are a big deal. I mean, if you look at the North American League situation right now, it's the team that's on the outside looking in of the typical top 4, and I want to kind of shed that thought process because we have moved past that. The Sonics have now very firmly cemented themselves in the top 4 over the last 2 stages, and I think moving forward that they're going to consistently be a team that can compete at the top. They're actually in our very next matchup. Right. They're playing against Beast Coast in the battle of which team gets to keep their teal logo. Beast Coast at 6 points, Sonics at 9 points, but Beast Coast had that slow start and seemingly have picked things up. But as for the major, the upcoming major, that's the real question mark. And Dark Zero obviously have some catching up to do just because of the fact that they had the first 2 play days off after they'd come back from Mexico and they'd had issues with the COVID, diagnosis back in Mexico. So that's something that's kind of upended their schedule. And DZ have 6 points on the table in their very final play day. They're going to be playing Astralis and Beast Coast. Now, if Astralis that we've seen thus far shows up, who are currently 1 and 4, then that should be a relatively easy 3 points for Dark Zero. Beast Coast will be the very final matchup of this stage, and that one could end up being a very significant match because Beast Coast right now finds themselves in 5th, 1 point back of TSM, who's currently in 4th. And in fact, for those of you that aren't keenly following the standings right now, with the exception of OXG being at the top, the race is completely wide open. Oxygen obviously had the week off or has the week off today, so they're not going to be able to pick up any points. But Space Station and the Sonics could vault up to tie with first place with a win today. If both of them win, then we'll have a 3-way tie at 12 points. But then after that, TSM is in 4th with 7 points all the way down to Xset with 3. That means that a single win today for any of those bottom teams is enough for them to shoot up to almost the top half of the standings here, which is just to show you how divided the league is, Michael. I mean, we've got we're very top heavy, and then if you look at Dark Zero downwards, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, they all have 1 win, or in Dark Zero's case, 1 win and then 1 overtime win.
Right.
So it's really anybody's game at this particular moment. And speaking of the game, we are just moments away from being able to get in, but in the interim, I hope you enjoy us discussing the standings and how impactful this game can be.
Yeah, I mean, it was Playday number 3, actually, where we specifically discussed how at that time, Oxygen and Sonics were the only teams who had walked away from the rest of the pack. Everyone else, TSM, Astralis, Dark Zero, Space Station, Beast Coast, Xset, they all had 3 points. Mirage had 0 on Playday number 3. I mean, we'd already made a lot of progress at that point. It was all so top heavy. It was Oxygen and Sonics, really. And then now where we are, we still have a very close pack, but I mean, it hasn't changed much. It's still so top heavy. So yeah, it's been an interesting NAL so far through this stage. You don't always see something like this, where you have all the teams so close you can't really predict who's going to go where. I do think now that we're going into the second half of this split, that today's the day where teams start to separate themselves, bottom half or lower half. We start drawing a line in the sand here and now, and it's going to start with none other than SSG and TSM. I think that is the most ceremonious match to lead us off, as they sit right next to each other on the standings, the biggest names in the NAL, and it's going to be really, really important for both teams' trajectories, as we've already discussed today.
Yeah, I mean, the standings for today's matches are huge, right? SSG versus TSM, as long as there's an actual winner, and we're ready to get into Oregon, by the way, so rejoice, for we are ready to get things going.
We did it.
The winner of today's matchup between SSG and TSM, Michael, will be given a massive gift in the standings. TSM can kind of throw a wrench in the gears by winning here and shooting over top of SQ and SSG, but if SSG wins, then it's going to be a dogfight at the top. Outside of that, for the rest of you who don't know what our schedule is or didn't see it, as we now get into the operator ban phase, after Beast Coast and Sonics, a victory for Sonics there ties them with OXG at the top. Xset versus DZ could be one of DZ's easiest games moving forward, and it will need to be a victory for DZ if they want to try to make it to the major. A loss there for Dark Zero to Xset will most likely make their trip to the major impossible at that point, unless they go on a miracle run for the remainder of the season. And then Mirage versus Astralis has huge implications for the bottom. But we don't need to talk about that anymore. We can refer back to it because it's time to get into Space Station versus TSM. Operator bans are in on the board. Warden banned out is a bit unorthodox, but Hibana and Flores are relatively understandable. Valkyrie will join as well. That means that Wamai and Miro will both be available, 2 operators that tend to see a high ban rate, whose impact can be quite large on this map.
So Warden actually has a similar role to an SAS operator on defense, very interestingly, but he has a different set of kit. Obviously, he's going to have that 1.5 on that MPX. That's a headshot machine. You are going to win a lot of fights with that gun. I know it's a pea shooter, but the 1.5 makes all the difference on a gun like that. The reason why you're going to ban him out is because you really want to clear out specific corners that take a lot of work as an attacker. And if you put a Warden there, you bring that Ying, then it's going to be really hard for the defense to accommodate, to deal with that. That's why you see Bolo. I mean, obviously the Ying 6-pick from SSG. No duh, right? They get rid of the Warden. They know where they're going with this. That's also why you see the Wamai 6-pick from Bolo, though. He knows what's happening as well. He's aware that the Ying is coming. The Warden band broadcasts it. And, well, yeah, you got to counter that Ying somehow. So bring the magnets, bring the Jaeger. You've got the kit to stop it. You're going to see those as mainstay defenders for most rounds until the Ying stops being brought.
Yeah, and Ella has slowly become very meta on this laundry supply room defense. Some teams will bring the FO12. For those of you that are unaware, that is Ella's shotgun. Then she's got the Evo Scorpion as her main weapon that you'll see most often. And the reason for that is pillar control is crucial. Pillar being almost the center of your screen right now. And big ups to our observers for showing that one off. Usually teams will attack with a bunker buster composition, which is what that Ying is going to be a main focal point of. You can either attack the blue tarps area of bunker down below, you can take control of meeting and then blow open that hatch and then drop your Candelas down there. But all of the while that this is happening, that pillar is center stage in the defense and is essentially the beachhead. Once the attackers can take control of pillar, they'll usually get the soft or hard wall right next to it. In this case, TSM has left it soft, and then they can begin to exert some influence on the back of the site, which gets very cramped for the defenders. They get shoved into freezer, and they try to play defensively from that front of laundry room. Anyway, it's 30 seconds off the board, and we'll witness TSM's very first defense on the bottom floor site.
So an interesting use of a nade there from Houghton to clear the top of laundry stairs. They're not taking any risks, Space Station. They're trying to be thorough, and rightfully so, against TSM, who will push you to the limit. Now they're droning their way into pillar. That's Skies on drone, hard support, doing his job. What a legend, as he's followed up by Fultz, another legend. And SSG are starting to open up these drops. With the Hibana ban, they have to bring the Maverick to open the drops. You could bring a Thermite, it'll get you 2. You could bring a... which they have done as well. You could bring a Ace that'll only get you 1. In general, a Thermite and a Maverick, that combo is the most efficient for opening drops when Hibana is banned.
Now, obviously, it goes without saying that when a team bans an operator, they're not likely to be caught off guard by it. In this case, Space Station banned Hibana, which means that they are hoping that it will help them when they move to defense by hurting TSM on attack. That's why you see SSG bringing the double hard breach combo of Maverick and Thermite. Ace is available but will not be played, so you don't need him for now, I suppose. And there's been some changes to the way that we see hard breachers brought. In this case, the grenades of Hot and Cold will come in quite handy, and they very likely have nades in the hands of Rampy as well, and the Gone 6 is a secondary. So lots of soft destruction as Space Station are setting up to attack the front of Laundry, and out goes one of those shots from Fultz. I don't know if it connects or not, but the ADS of Achieved doesn't get what it wants. Still playing off of this freezer angle. Achieved watching the stairs, posted up at this position. He knows that they're coming in that direction, but he doesn't know when, and he's looking in the wrong way. He turns around right as the Candelas come out. Rampy's grenade finds Achieve. There you go. You've pushed the Jaeger off of that spot, and immediately Bosco will charge forward, picking off Bolo. Hot and Cold drops, as does Fultz. Team sitting at a 3v3. 30 seconds remaining, and TSM posted up, still watching this position. Slowly the dominoes fall, but TSM knows that it's a freezer take. The last 3 players from SSG are all in that same position, but they seem to lack some critical intel. A brief rotate by the Ying of Bosco from above, and Geo is tasked to stop this, but he can't do it. He thinks that there's going to be a push out. A Candela goes in front of him, a smoke cut off. He misses out on Bosco, but Chala doesn't, and Geo finishes off onto Rampy. It was a 3v3, but TSM doesn't lose a single player in the final moments. They hold steady and take round 1.
Well done there to TSM. So let's talk about what happened. First of all, I want to address the operator bans. So for TSM, they banned out Flores and Valkyrie. Those are bog standard on Oregon. You got to get rid of those, especially if you're starting on defense. You really don't want the Flores in play. That's going to allow you to hold elbow, yada, yada, yada. You don't want to hear about that. The more interesting ones are the Hibana and the Warden bans. Now, SSG with those bans are effectively pushing themselves into control. They are the ones dictating who picks what right now. They are the ones with the offset bans, with the slightly different bans, trying to keep their opponent on their toes. And that difference is notable in that it allows SSG to manipulate the strategy in the way that the execution's happening. Now, the problem last round was not the strategy, rather it was the execution of said strategy. What happened was TSM picked off the only 2 players who were pushing by Laundry. And if you know anything about competitive Siege, you know that crossfires are essential on an execute or a defense. Once you lose that player by Laundry or players by Laundry, the guys in freezer on attack, they're all just trapped. How are they going to fight their way out of that? Well, the Candelas might help, but they only got Bolo. That's it. And then they were completely out of Candelas. What do you do now? Well, you're pretty much trapped, like I said. So they tried to rotate Skies late, but it was way too late. And then the entire attack just fell apart.
Well, a bit too linear even after they got that very first pick onto Achieved, but they didn't get any map control from that as Achieved had scampered off of his hold, and TSM's setup was anticipating, or at least maybe not set up entirely for it, but was flexible enough to deal with a freezer hold. You saw that Geo immediately hit the ground when he was playing on pillar. He was looking through the soft wall where he could catch the ankles of anybody running into the bomb site from that direction in freezer. Obviously, he would have been susceptible if the attackers had a swung from freezer towards pillar, but I don't know if they'd effectively droned it out and had all that information. That said, we're now 30 seconds into round number 2, and it's a top floor defense, the only bomb site that happens to be on the top floor of Oregon, known affectionately as Kids Dorms. So, if you're up here, the setup that TSM has, if you're SSG, how do you read into this? Well, a lot of teams will want to take from Big Tower, push into Attic. Yet again, a Jaeger will be the first line of contact, but it's not achieved in this case. It's Merc playing off of that role. All 3 of his ADSs are positioned in front of him because the primary target of SSG's aggression is going to be that deployable shield. SSG wasting no time by already working away at the double Attic panel from Big Tower. As you can see, hot and cold blowtorching it away. All the while, another hard breach goes off, this time from the opposite side of the map, onto that closet wall leading into games, and that Skies is the one to accomplish it.
Yeah, so wall open now and achieved. I think he messed up his electro claws there. He was a little too slow. It was destroyed by the explosion from the thermite. He's still got 1, so that's an ineffective use of Cade there, unfortunately, or Kaid, excuse me. Merc trying to hold on to Attic, and he's got all 3 of his ADSs to hold this position. That's really good prediction from TSM to expect what's about to happen. The Ying play on Attic window. Bosco can clear all those ADSs and still have Candelas, but it's an expensive ask. And when he goes for that, it's going to be well broadcasted. Here it comes.
Merc is still there. Bosco's going to look to angle this in a position where it does maximum damage, and off the window frame, who knows? Out it goes, and it detonates immediately by swinging on over, and hot and cold takes out Merc. The Jaeger is first to fall yet again. SSG opens up the killing. They've got more work to be done, and it wasn't successful in the very first round. Nitro Cell blown by Bolo with 30 seconds remaining, and more Candelas going out, and this time TSM's defense not quite as stalwart. Oh, but I might have eaten my words, as Geo and Achieved managed to give their team a lead, or at least trade it back. But Hot and Cold's a monster. 3 big kills are on the board, and down below, the 3 armor of Achieved. It's going to be making a ton of noise. Now, he is a Nitro Cell, but he's too late. Diffuser's already been planted, so you're going to have to use that as a distraction, herald your way back to the top of the bomb site. He actually catches the Yana, but he hesitates, and he doesn't see a 4K from Hot and Cold in his future. Excellent play from one of SSG's newer members, and it's a tie game at 1 apiece.
Huge round there from Houghton. I mean, I just played kind of a fun tournament against Houghton, and one thing I remember is that he was just constantly destroying us. I mean, we beat them, but it was like 12 kills every map from Hot and Cold. He is so consistent in everything he does, whether it's a meme tournament or in NAL top tier play. He just cannot seem to be stopped ever since he got dropped from Dark Zero. That was the big change for him, where it completely enabled him. He went from team to team, Barrage Space Station, he did all the things, and it just works no matter where he is. In this case, getting his team around and himself a 4K, but it was also, keep in mind, off of the back of Bosco's excellent Ying Candelas. His placement was perfect. I thought he was going to have to burn the 3 ADSs in pit, but no. He just places the Candela in a way that is not caught by the ADSs. He follows that up by placing a Candela deep inside of dorms, and that allows Hot and Cold to get 2 more kills after he gets the initial pick and pit. I mean, it's beautiful team play from SSG, and it's great to put a player like Houghton in that really linchpin position where he either makes or breaks the round, because you know he's going to make it.
Well, you now begin to understand the Warden ban an awful lot, right? 3 rounds in, and Space Station has trotted out Ying every single time. In terms of throwables, every player on the team has access to them. You've got 4 frag grenades, you've got 6 flashes, you've got 2 smokes, and then you've got the 3 Candelas, plus the Gone 6 as well from Rampy. That is a whole hell of a lot that a Warden could potentially help mitigate. Additionally, if Wamai were being played, he's not banned. I would like to repeat that. Wamai is not banned out. You could be doubling up here on your anti-toss denial. There's a Jaeger that's been present every single time. Expect to see either Jaeger or Wamai every single round. But SSG are really taking advantage of this ban. And through those 2 rounds, even though the first round did break in TSM's favor, they didn't exactly counter what SSG is bringing in the most adept of ways, and Geo could end up finding himself victim here. And how does he get away with 1 HP as the grenade goes off, taking the shield? And he's now engaged in a duel with Bosco on Repel, and only 1 HP is what stands between him and an early grave, and Bosco finishes the deal. Space Station flawless on First Bloods through the 3 rounds played.
That was a really great piece of teamwork we just saw from Space Station. They identified the problem, player in Arsenal, and they came up with the solution. Nades from below and pressure from Repel. It worked perfectly. No HP lost. Here comes the Finka boost as they try to push these attackers, or rather defenders, off of Armory and Trophy. They've done just that. As we saw Bolo fall back. He wanted to get a refrag. That'd be the ideal circumstance, but you can see that SSG are playing very cautiously. It's because they're aware TSM are going to be vying for that re, and they're not going to let it happen.
Well, there goes a Goyo shield. Fultz still standing in his exact same position. Now the wall goes off, and Trophy is a bit clearer as the fire slowly extinguishes itself. Merc's favorite and most played operator is that Finka, so expect to see Finka when they swap sides, but for now SSG is going to give it a whirl. Next Goyo shield goes off, and the drones will bypass that opening in closet. No damage done to them by the toxic canister because robots can't breathe. Sorry if you disagree, but that's just the way the world works. I don't make the rules. Final minute to go, and TSM still holding very far off site, at least in Achieved's position. He had done this before as Kaid, but he's now taken up that same spot as Malusi. Hot and Cold doesn't seem to realize how close they came to Loggerheads. Adrenal Surge goes off as Skies takes a bunch of damage, and Chala gets a pick onto Bosco. It's not the first pick, because there had been one earlier on, but SSG looking to break into the site. Down goes Chala, but Merc refrags. They never cleaned out Attic, and Mark is still in there, so TSM can play with impunity as Space Station tries to push in. Skies does just that with Fultz side by side, but the retake from Achieved is there, and they'll go hunting for the very final member of Space Station, who is not long for this Earth. And TSM answers back. Their second attempt here at Dorms proves to be successful.
Solid hold there from TSM. Crucially, the push downstairs from SSG did not have a lot of success. They ended up losing Hot down there. And that's big for TSM because that eliminates your X Factor. You no longer have to consider the extra angle that SSG might try to present. There was no Attic pressure whatsoever. Their only real push for Attic was, let's go through Trophy Door into Pit. That's dangerous. That's very risky, and Merc punishes that harshly. Now, when you lose that pressure, when you don't have that extra, again, the crossfire, we talk about these crossfires so much, then it's really difficult to make a push out of Trophy or even the breach successful. Because it's just linear. It's straight linear. When you have that kind of attack, it is usually going to fail unless it's a rush and the enemy team is not, expecting it or not ready for it. And this was not the case, obviously. So it's a pretty routine hold from TSM, but still a solid one regardless. I think the most important variable was the roam downstairs.
Well, 2 times that now we've now seen TSM play off-site, and the drone work for Space Station not quite so sufficient. They didn't know where Achieved was playing just outside of Meeting, over by Kitchen, and it ends up being a thorn in their side. Not that that was their single problem, but when Achieved came back, he was able to prey on the fact that SSG had no idea the whereabouts of the one player from TSM that wasn't within the confines of either bomb site. So something that SSG does need to work on is going to be maybe some more drone work. And so far, SSG has not looked like a bad team. Neither of these teams have really put in a poor effort thus far. Some matches Michael characterized, obviously, by which team makes the least mistakes versus which teams that are making the most mistakes tend to have a good round here or there. I don't think that's the case. That said, it's a second attempt at laundry supply room for TSM. They were successful the first time around, and now they're back here in round number 4, only having played these 2 sites. And they're not going to make any mistakes about this denial, bringing Wamai and Jaeger to deal with the abundance of things that can be thrown out by SSG.
I love this. You don't really see what's happening here. Achieved is playing by T1 stairs, and what he's doing is he's trying to shoot drones for his teammate and bait for his teammate up in T3. Hodden's going to drone this out, but he's not going to be able to see Geo because Geo's hiding behind the metal. He's looking, he's checking, and okay, he just says it's clear, and he moves on. Now, you could drone it by jumping up the ladder, but it takes so much time, most people don't usually bother. Achieved shooting the drones, again, baiting for his teammate, and Geo might go undetected in T3 because of that. So that little bit of teamwork could net a flank later in the round, depending on what SSG decide to attack.
There goes that exothermic charge upstairs inside of security. So a drop into freezer is now secured for Space Station. Bolts will watch over that as Skies goes to drone work. The thing is that while I was a bit critical of Space Station's coordination off of that, they have been on drones quite consistently. Skies in particular spending an abundance of time on it. As you can see, Rampy has been as well, which is not odd, but for somebody like Rampy who enters in 4th overall in terms of ratings, top 5 in kills per round, he's somebody that you wouldn't expect to spend so much time scouting out that intel, but if it works for the team, then that's all that matters.
Well, there's no entries for either team so far. This is going to be an absolute brawl when we hit the moment, and here it comes as the Candelas start to pop off. Nobody netted, though, off the first Candela. There's still 2 for Bosco, so he can make that work for him in the future.
There's a grenade that goes off, and it'll do a little bit of damage to Achieved. Another grenade goes off, this one more successful. Immediately fired back by TSM. Both teams competing on even footing. Merc might take some damage if he plays around this the wrong way. Bosco charging in while Rampy covers. And it's only a shred of HP, not realizing there's still somebody playing an elbow, and Chala's there to govern that position. TSM swatting away the entry from Space Station. And once again, SSG will trail. It goes from bad to worse, and there you go. Another lockout from TSM. Even if Space Station are getting the upper hand at the beginning of the conflict, TSM are cool as a cucumber, Michael, because they have stopped that push 3 of 4 times thus far, and that's exactly the round count that we sit at between these two teams.
Yeah, so here's the problem, Parker. It's just... So, okay, first of all, I got to say I really like the way that SSG is playing this. I think it's super interesting. I think their employment of that the cut, you notice, I'm sure most of you have noticed that they are very, very focused on getting freezer door control so that they can cut off the middle of the site and eliminate players on rotation. But here's the problem. TSM are too aware of that for it to work. See, when the enemy team knows what cuts you're going for, they can just avoid those angles. For example, they leave a player on elbow. So since TSM still has a player on elbow, you'd think, oh, well, that's far removed from the take, and they're not going to be directly influential, but not the case, because SSG are relying on the explosive entry following the Candelas for their success. And that explosive entry usually will work if a team is in your standard anchor positions, because the entry knows exactly what they're looking for. You still have a guy on elbow, and the entry's like, wait, where's the person I'm trying to kill? Where's the entry point that I'm trying to, you know, get at? And then they get swatted away by the person playing further back on defense. So because TSM is aware of what SSG is trying to pull, yeah, I mean, it won't work. It's not going to work for SSG. They need to dive deeper, and they need their Candelas to be deeper. And I mean, that's a whole ask in of itself in terms of utility. There's a lot of layers there. It's not as easy as you might think. So that's causing a problem for Space Station. They need to adjust, especially their basement attack.
TSM will go to a bomb site that they have not yet played. They've gone to laundry twice and dorms twice, and in this one, going to the typical kitchen meeting defense that we tend to see. I don't know if one of those kitchen cafeteria will pop up or not, but we'll keep our eyes on it. For now, very similar to what you see out of that basement hold, is that teams will want to defend Big Tower. Gio will be on a collision course here as he walks right into the waiting arms of Hot and Cold, who has been so proficient. And it's 5 rounds in a row of the 5 that we've played where SSG have been successful with the ensuing conflict. But right in lockstep, just like every other round, TSM can answer that one back. So while an opportunity is given to Space Station, it is fleeting at best, as TSM have been so good at keeping this close. They very narrowly take a lead. They miss out on that opportunity by a hair. As Rampy in back tower absorbs tons of damage. He's got Bosco with him now. But TSM are aware of this, and it was the UMP of Bolo that was doing some damage.
That damage is definitely going to be a problem for Rampy later on. You can see Bolo is ready for more. He wants another opportunity to do some damage, get a kill, put his team in the lead in terms of manpower, and so far, he's not given that opportunity. Now, you can see SSG are starting to run out of time. That's very important. Only a minute left, and remember all those other linear attacks that SSG have brought out? Yeah? Remember how those all failed? Well, they're setting up for what could be the most linear of attacks right now. A pure big tower take with a minute left and 1 player low on HP. This is going to be tricky.
And there's smokes going out onto the stage. Down goes Bolo. Hot and Cold's kill tally is really something to behold, and he is making tons of space for his team. He's got more to deal with. Nitro cells still available. Merc doesn't have any smokes left. He's just a gun, and he's gone again. Hot and Cold finds kill number 3. He's already got a 4K in one round. He's looking for more, and how about another 4K? And Ace denied as Achieved shuts him down. The playing over by Flag. He's going to have to come back into the bomb site with Rampy watching. And no opportunity for Skies to get that diffuser down. It was an absolute brawl, but SSG walks out of that round with a win.
Wow, the 4K for Hodden, nearly the ace. He was so close, Parker, to an ace. 2 4Ks in a one map, though. That is wild. And we cannot sing the praises of Hot and Cold enough. I stand by what I said, Parker. That execution certainly would have been very difficult for SSG. Were it not for Hot and Cold picking up a 4K. The trend with both of the rounds that SSG have won so far, Hot and Cold got a 4K.
Both times.
Both times. And
Both times.
It's just, it's silly. I'm on the one hand, I'm impressed by Hot. And on the other, also, keep in mind, his team is setting him up for it. That's very important. He is not just getting these willy-nilly. He is being assisted by the Candelas, the drone work, the calls. Like, he wouldn't have known that he could needed somebody by sandbags last round if it weren't for the call on the ADSs. I'm sure that came up. So this kind of communication, or even clearing ADSs if there were any, that's important to Hot and Cold's success, but he is also still the key to this success on the other hand.
Well, final defense now for TSM as they want to ensure that they outright win this half. It's been an impressive 3 rounds stitched together on Oregon, where we do tend to see Oregon be quite well balanced between teams that know it, as well as these two teams do. SSG once again threw that Warden ban in specifically to take advantage of TSM's inability to stop all the throwables that SSG brought. But guess what? I don't really think it worked as effectively as they wanted. At best, Spacestation is going to walk away with a tie here with 3 rounds. They've been wonderful at getting these opening picks. So far, flawless, in fact. They come very close to doing it again with Achieved on the run over by Small Tower, and that's where SSG will start this assault. They're going to want to clear that out, then take control of Kitchen, do some damage from below before translating the 2 hard breachers up top. There's also a Capitao on the board of Hot and Cold, and this one is a bit unorthodox in comparison to what we've seen from previous rounds. A Capitao is not always a must pick for this bomb site, but he does have access to the can opener, that hard breach tool, so they might not have a Maverick on the board, but there is another gadget to break through any reinforcements they find.
Yeah, it's a solid amount of hard breach, I'd say. If you're gonna only bring one, you could bring that supplemental with the can opener. I agree with that. And it's being used downstairs. I think SSG has gotten wise to the fact that their attacks have become a little too linear, and that's why they're going for a downstairs clear on a top floor defense. It's also says that they are aware of how heavy TSM is focusing on the roam, because a downstairs clear can usually net you a kill or 2 on those roamers. You can see that they've just been isolated from the site. Yes, TSM's roamers will escape. Bolo and Achieve, they're going to descend into the basement. But if the cuts are correct, those roamers won't be able to get back to the site, which isolates 3 players on site for TSM and creates a power vacuum that can be jumped into by the players on SSG. That's a big opportunity for the attack, assuming it's properly utilized. But I wasn't wrong, but like the cuts weren't correct, and the roamers have made it back to site already.
Well, with all that said, there's a minute to go, and SSG have decided that they don't want to take Attic, they don't want to take Master, they're going to go for a window plan, and Bosco just runs right into Dorms. 6 rounds in a row that SSG have led off the kills. Will TSM be able to answer back? The answer is usually yes, but there's a bit of a pause right now. A ceasefire, maybe, but Bosco goes huge. He takes down 3 in the process before Merc ends his killing, leaving the Jaeger as the last man standing for TSM. Diffuser planted by Skies, so SSG will get out of dodge. Quite successfully so. This seems like an impossible task for Merc. Will he be able to pull it off? Crossfire's established directly in front of him. If he looks to the right, they're going to kill him from the left, and that's exactly what happens. Fultz says no more. Former teammates, now adversaries. The first half is in the books, Michael. Both teams walk away with 3 rounds.
All right, first half was really interesting, Parker. We saw a lot of moments where SSG have a plan and TSM counter that plan harshly. We saw a lot of moments where TSM struggled despite being in the advantageous position. Opportunities lost, opportunities made. I'm surprised by how many rounds TSM managed to take away from that, to be honest, because it looks like SSG's attacks were in full command for the majority of the time. The real saving grace for TSM, and I think the main reason they got 3 rounds out of that first half, is specifically the bottom floor defense, which is going to be the first site that SSG go to now in the second half. Because that bottom floor defense, specifically the thing that SSG was relying on when they were attacking, that cut from freezer door just was ineffective. And because of that, TSM were able to hard counter, and they managed to get those 2 really important rounds. So now going into the second half, there's a lot of strategies that you could see in play from both of these teams. That's typical of TSM and SSG. So there's no guarantee this is going to be another 3-3 half. One of these teams could start running away with it here. Curious to find out what's going to happen.
Bolo's on the Finca this time, so TSM likes this operator an awful lot. Michael Merck is going to be on Sledge, so a small change in terms of who's going to be playing what operator. It was talked about on the pre-show. You might be wondering to yourself, why are we talking about Finca? Well, we've seen Finca through 2 rounds thus far. SSG brought her out for a single round, and that was it. The experiment was very short-lived. Maybe 2 rounds? I can't exactly recall if it was 2, but I know 1 for sure. As for TSM, it's Merck's most played operator. So that is something to keep an eye on in regards to how this is going to be used by TSM. As we talk about that, 30 seconds into the very first defense for SSG, and they've got Rampy on a suicide mission right now, playing at the top of Big Tower. Hot and Cold is not too far off. They see drones dropping in front of them, and Rampy's going to be sitting with some denial from those ADSs, but they'll only catch 2 things. Surya Gates there in front of him as well could potentially help, and a nade from below is tossed out, but Rampy's already moved off of that position. Somebody tries to rappel through that second floor window. Hot and Cold has that position under watch.
This is a really good... Oh, no, the roam from Fultz. Will it get detected? No is the answer. Merc goes down. No drone work from TSM. Merc on a solo entry, and he's punished for it. The challenge, though, over by T3, goes the way of achieved before he's C4'd by Skies. The assist from SSG and making that T3 roam a win is massive. They will not only get the leadoff pick, but they will walk away from the roam successful.
Really beautiful stuff from Spacestation on that coordination. The Nitro Cell, Hot and Cold having his teammates back. And Rampy knew that in that position he was playing to die. We all knew it as well. The only way you're getting out of there alive is if you kill everybody and then drop down and try to go through the stairs into the basement. And that so seldom happens. So TSM have used about half of this round to clear out that position. The fallback from Houghton and Skies proves to be successful, but it cost TSM greatly. They'll now try to take control of Meeting, and they've got the stage wall in front of them. Hot and Cold has not completely made it back to the bomb site just yet. He's sitting inside of security right now. And if he's got to rotate in the kitchen, he could potentially catch them off guard. Okay. TSM's focus seems to be very much on that pillar part of the bomb site. Hot and Cold does have that rotate, so there's an avenue back. Bolo takes out Fultz, so even though SSG continues to get these very first picks, TSM are keeping it close throughout these rounds.
This is an interesting one so far, Parker. Pillar control for TSM is massive, and oh, the timing! Don't know if that would have been a full exposure there, but either way, opportunity lost. Chala setting up for the plant. Nades going in to try and cover. Bolo uses the Finca charge to heal his teammates up, give him a little bit of overheal, and he's going to go for a push in the hallway. Very dangerous. Will he get away with it? The answer is no. Actually, it's Chala who goes down. Pistol out, and Houghton gets a third with the pistol. Beautiful play as he inserts himself in the midst of them all and just guns them down one by one.
Houghton is everywhere all at once. This man is smurfing on TSM right now, and this was the Hot and Cold that used to dominate the matches when he was on Mirage, and there's a reason why Space Station wanted him. They picked him up, brought him in after Canadian had stepped off of the roster. Luke was in as a temporary sub, and boy, oh boy, what an impressive tally by Hot and Cold thus far through this match. How many rounds has he won solely based off of these clutches? On attack, Michael, the 2 rounds, the very first rounds that SSG won were because of 2 4Ks from Hot and Cold. He had a massive round right there. I believe that was a 3K on that round. And then he had a single kill in another round. Well, guess what? Houghton is sitting at 12 kills. 8 of those come through 2 4Ks, another 3K, and then a single kill. Yeah. Safe to say, if Hot and Cold has a multi-kill round, SSG is going to win because they have a 100% success rate doing that, and SSG takes the very first defense off of that.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Parker, a little silly thing. He's got 12 kills. The next two highest performers in the lobby are Bosco and Merc. And they both have 6 kills each, which obviously adds together to make 12. So the next two top players make the amount of kills that Houghton has currently. He's kind of walking away with it. You know, Houghton is one of those players for the majority of his early career really did not get a lot of praise because he didn't play very well. Could be because of the role he was on. Could be because of the teams he was playing for. Could be a plethora of reasons. It doesn't really matter. The point is he was not one of those performers that like shined above all others. You know, he wasn't an Esk for the longest time. He wasn't a Palu. He wasn't a Pengu, etc., etc. I could go through the full list. What about this player? It doesn't matter. My point is he wasn't one of those players. And over the last year and a half or so, he started to change that history. He started to make himself to be something greater. And I think if he keeps this up for another year or two, I mean, he could be making a bid for one of the top positions of all Siege history in terms of how he's considered within the community. I think he's really making a play for that. And his performance it really speaks for itself.
He entered the day in 5th place overall in those ratings like we talked about. Rampy was in 4th, Hot and Cold 5th. Just behind him, a .126 for Rampy, .125 for Houghton, and Houghton's tally at the moment is 39 and 26. Well, he just broke 50 kills with that round. On this stage is 39 plus 12 is 51. I know that we're not supposed to do math on broadcast, but here you go.
Sacrilege.
And as far as I'm aware, he is now only the 2nd player to break 50 kills in the NA League, unless Merc has also broken it, but we don't have the stats in front of us. Vertical has the most kills of anybody with 57. In terms of Hot's overall numbers, though, he's 8-0 on entry, and given the amount of kills that he's been getting so far, at least from my math, he's got 3 opening picks thus far in this match alone. I don't believe he's been the first to die at all, well, because... That's correct. Spacestation hasn't actually forfeited a single first blood. TSM have yet to get the first kill on a single round, and despite it being so close, that's a major nod to TSM, but a bit of a wag of the finger at Spacestation. Merc is sitting at 6 kills, so Merc has broke double digits as well for those that are keeping track or broken 50 kills for those that are keeping track at home. So Vertical, Hot and Cold, and Merc all at 50 plus kills so far through the 6th play days. That's really not too bad at all. That's an impressive number. So kudos to Hot and Cold, and it's nice to see his rebirth as a player. I know that it was a bit of a controversial decision for Dark Zero to cut him from the roster. It was an emotional one at that for a lot of players because Hot and Cold does tend to be a very well-loved figure in the entire community, not just this continent. And having a second life, showing that even though it's been quite a while since he was on that old Ash role, as you will fondly remember, Michael, he is still capable of keeping up with all of the young gunners.
Certainly is, Parker. But enough about Hot and Cold. One thing I want to focus on here was that strategy we just saw from Spacestation. I'm glad to get this technical pause to dissect it because there's a lot of layers to talk about. There were so many instances of direct counters to TSM's clear from Big Tower. I mean, you could just see the fingerprints of counterplay all over it. I see you, Lycan. I see you, rest of SSG, involved in that strategy because they clearly put in a lot of effort to specifically counter the Big Tower take from TSM. They knew exactly what TSM was going to do. It started with the T3 roam. Obviously, a standard T3 roam is pretty, you know, it's usually a suicide position. You're going to die. But you want to take as many people with you as possible. In this case, it was a set-up T3 hold with intent, with deliberate positioning. It was a full, hard investment from SSG, specifically to counter TSM's clear, because they knew TSM would. That's the big thing. And that clear was halted in its tracks. The initial clear, in fact, was punished so severely that they ended up losing manpower advantage and a significant chunk of their utility. And you followed up with little things like a mute jammer on the stage wall, just to slow down the exothermic charge you know is going to go onto that wall because you know TSM wants to open it. It reeks of SSG knowing how TSM is going to execute, reading them like a book, and setting up a counter strat specifically for them. It could also be a standard, you know, just T3 investment. TSM could have walked straight into the trap, but I think it's more deliberate than that, and I love seeing stuff like that.
So we had some issues in regards to audio sync that seemingly have been resolved, and we'll keep a close eye on it. Thank you so much for your patience, by the way, as we now get underway with the remainder of this matchup. For those of you that are just tuning in through the first half, well, it was a 3-3 scoreline between these two teams. The tale of the tapes for the squads is that they enter almost in the same position in the standings. Spacestation in third, TSM in fourth. At stake is a position at the upcoming major. Only 4 teams from North America will be present.
I like steak.
Sorry?
I like steak.
It's a great thing. It's not a given that OXG will qualify, but they do have quite a lead. If the Sonics and Space Station both end the day with victories, then they will tie OXG, who has the day off, with 12 points apiece. And because of the implications that has on TSM, Beast Coast, and Dark Zero down below, it's going to be really tough to catch those 3 teams. And while they won't have clinched a spot, they'll be very close to having clinched it. That said, that's just a bigger look at what the matchup is, because there's a lot more going on. It's a Dorms defense this time. The second defense that we see for Space Station, and Rampy is playing in the same suicide spot upstairs in the top of tower.
Very hard position to hold, and he's going to be successful. Down goes Achieved. That is going to be huge. So he's done his job. Rampy can now die, and there it is. The grenade will kill him before the C4 detonates. So well done. He just saved Geo's life. Good job, Merc. But it doesn't matter because he did his job. Achieved goes down. And now the momentum is squarely in favor of the defenders. I know it's an even man count. Doesn't matter. That T3 roam, if it gets anything, is successful. So big win there for Rampy.
Well, yet again, another big opening pick. Space Station on 8 in a row thus far. Every round has gone in their direction, and the stats behind opening picks are usually quite jarring. It's usually about 70 to 80% success rate for the team that gets that opening pick. Obviously, the thing to take into consideration is how quickly a refrag happens. TSM have been able to trade out more often than not, which is why the scoreline is as tight as it is, despite the fact that Space Station have been so proficient at that. But on even footing, both teams at 4 players apiece. With just under a minute to go in the round, the Dorms site is the focus for TSM. They're going to try to take advantage of the fact that there's no Warden as well, with a Ying on the board. No Finka experiment this time. TSM didn't like it after the first round. They'll watch the big window, and so will Space Station as a grenade gets caught out, and it gets caught by Chala right in the face. A toxic canister goes, and with 30 seconds left, TSM will have to hop in and make something happen. Olo tries it, but he gets shredded by Houghton. The Wamai playing far enough back. Geo edging up onto the shield. He takes out Skies, and now there's something that they can exploit. Looking towards the back of the bomb site. Geo in a strong position here, but he has to collapse on Bosco as well. And Bosco's given his position away, but Hot and Cold does it yet again. A double for him. He's still got more in him. It's Merc to try and fight against the remainder of the team. And how about a 3K from Hot and Cold? 15 kills through 8 rounds, and SSG are up 5-3.
How does Houghton win that? He has no right to win that. For those of you who are not familiar with Siege, when you are the one disengaging from the angle and someone else is engaging on an angle, the person engaging has a decisive advantage. Even on land. These players are playing on land, so the picker's advantage is minimalized. But even on land, this is still a consideration. It's just something that is unavoidable. The laws of physics make it so. So because of that advantage for the person peeking and the disadvantage for the person not peeking, Houghton had no right winning that. How did he win that? A 3K for the man. He holds it together for his team, and frankly, it was falling apart at the seams for SSG. TSM's execution was perfect. Skies was distracted because of the Candelas, and he was playing inside a pit. Skies' job was to hold the attic push. He was unsuccessful because of that distraction. TSM opens the site wide open because of that. And it should be an easy breezy execution for TSM following that. But then off screen, Hot and Cold picks up 2 kills on 2 separate entries from 2 separate lanes, and then wraps it up with the bow in the third. Not that he didn't really even need to do that. His teammate would have been able to clutch. But the point still stands. The man, I want to stop. I'm so tired of talking about him because he deserves all the praise that he's being rendered. But it's just, you know, somebody else gets a 4K, please. Someone else pick up all the kills. I mean, right time, right place, right player. But geez, man, Hot cannot keep getting away with it, Parker. That's That's, I think, 4 rounds now that Houghton has clinched for his team of the 5 that they've won. And that's, I don't know. That's a silly tally. So, after winning their defense and dorms, SSG will go down to their tertiary bomb site. It's going to be Cafeteria. Parker wondered if we would see Cafeteria through this map. It seems we will.
I did wonder that.
And here we are, yeah.
Well, every single bomb site has now been played. This is a statement bomb site, I think, for Space Station. I know that they can play every bomb site on Oregon. They are a flexible team, and it is no surprise that they will want to go to a site that teams don't always love. The typical and most conventional setup on defense for this bomb site is where Rampy was positioned inside of showers. You're going to want to play in there with a soft wall in front of you next to the reinforced panel. You also want to have a rotate back to the site, which is where Rampy is. He's sitting on cams right now, but will mime off and carry those impacts so you can very quickly get back into Cafeteria. The thing is that if you can't hold that part very effectively, then you can get overrun by the attackers. And I know that TSM is well prepared for this. I don't expect them to be bamboozled by it. Another thing to note is that this operator roulette that's being played by Bolo. Ooh, very first round, that TSM is able to get an opening pick, and it happens against Fultz. So the timeout may be a bit too early to call the round for them, but paying dividends right off the bat. The new flashbang's working on hot and cold as he is now in a rock and a hard place, but a run out from Bosco will at least attract their attention for about a second. And TSM with 45 seconds into the round have got that very first pick. The point I was trying to make before I toss back to you, Michael, Bolo has been on an operator roulette. He started on Finca, he went to Ying, now he is reunited with Zofia, once his most popular and most played operator. We'll see if it changes the fortunes of TSM, as Bolo desperately needs something to kickstart this offense as he's 3-7.
Yeah, very important that Bolo starts finding the board. I think he based on what I'm seeing from the look on his face and the way he's playing, the way he's jumping from angle to angle, I think he's just overthinking it. And this happens sometimes. It looks, you know, I don't want to psychoanalyze too hard here, but it does happen in Siege. Sometimes all you really need to have to be successful in Siege is just to confidently do whatever it is you think was right for the moment. And it doesn't seem to be happening, not necessarily just for Bolo, for a number of players in this lobby. I mean, there's a lot of people who are not performing right now. And that gives a lot more room for players like Houghton, who are clearly in the right mindset right now, to flourish. And it's exactly what we're seeing from SSG. Let's see if that'll keep up, as TSM still have the lead in this round.
Nitro cell in hand for Hot and Cold, sitting on top of these 380Ss. 1 minute to go. He's expecting a push from the window. He pulls trigger on the C4, but it's a bit too early. Merc is inside of showers, now holding this position. A rotate from Hot and Cold will almost certainly spell his doom, but he gets out of there very quickly. He's just a step ahead of Merc. And a game of cat and mouse will continue. Hot and Cold getting ready for another potential multi-kill round. He's picked up 1 onto Geo, the Nomad no more. Teams at 4v4. The advantage from TSM not quite seized. Merc and Houghton will both tussle, and impact goes out, but it's thrown just at the feet of Merc. No real damage being done there with 30 seconds to go. TSM need to push the shower control, and they need to go quickly because they're not taking any significant map control away. Mr. 16 kills, still holding the one angle in, and he's got a line of sight to the bomb site in A as well. TSM taking their sweet time. Down goes Rampy. Merc's second kill, looking for more. Houghton just narrowly backs away from the gunfire. He sees Merc, down he goes, punishing him. It's a double for Houghton. A third could be in the works as well. There it is, a fourth line right up. No, it's Bosco to get it, and a pivot as it's achieved from above. A death drop through the hatch with match point in the grasps of SSG. Achieve knows he's not going anywhere in a hurry. 3 big kills for Hot and Cold on that round. 18 in total. And it's match point for Space Station.
Parker! That's another round that Houghton won for his team. Another one. How is it? He can't keep getting away with it. That's... All right. So what happened there? Well, Houghton holding a shield in the hallway. You know, the really interesting thing about that one, Parker, is, part of it's Houghton, but also a big part of that is TSM and their mistakes. Frankly, they made a lot. There are a number of solutions to the Houghton problem in the hallway, and I'm glad that we got to see the actual first-person perspective this time, because it was a lot easier to analyze what happened. Houghton just played the shield. So why is that significant? Many other players put in the position that Houghton was in, especially after he lost most of his HP, would have panicked and retreated and fallen off their position, and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get away, scary. I'm low on HP and my teammates are falling back. I have to fall back to... Not Houghton. No, sir. He's like, I got my shield. I'll play my shield. And the shield could have been destroyed by TSM. And Houghton could have just been peeked by the guy in showers. And, I mean, they could have double peeked in the hallway and pre-fired on the angles. I mean, there are so many options. The most important, obviously, the option that was not used by TSM is just destroy the heckin' shield. The lack of presence of mind to do that. The lack of investment on the utility. The just absolute focus on the site causes too many problems. You can't even push site until you deal with that. So yes, Houghton, very impressive. He's patient. He considers his options. He doesn't make mistakes. This is something that I've said of other legendary players like Pengu. One of the most notable things about Pengu, one of the things that made him the world champion twice over, he doesn't make mistakes. So, yeah, I mean, Houghton, he's not making mistakes. I don't know what else to say. The twice over, 3 times over.
I mean, what more is there to say that can already be said? Hot and Cold has been the name on everybody's lips for the last couple of stages, from Mirage now through 2 stages of SSG, and I've no doubt that the poor performance that SSG and Hot and Cold in particular had in the Mexico Major is working as fuel for this fire that is now allowing SSG to thrive. Well, they've done a pretty magnificent job of this second half. They've picked up 3 rounds on defense in what is now looking like a very defender-sided Oregon, and the operator ban of Hibana might be hurting TSM a little bit more than they had expected, and that might be some shrewd investigative work by Spacestation. You've given praise to Lycan earlier on during the tech pause, and well, I think it's fair to give it back. Both teams have very smart coaching staff behind them, both Data and Pojo for TSM, and Lycan and all the 40 analysts for SSG, and my goodness, this one might be over before it even gets started. Interrupting my train of thought, Spacestation gets right back on the horse with that opening pick, and they make it 2 for a good measure. Both Bolo and Geo are no more in this match. If SSG can get the rest of the 3, we might have seen the last of those 2 players, as it's match point for Spacestation with just over a minute to go.
This is the sort of result that you sadly can't predict, and the analyst desk is probably going to make note of this when we eventually get to that part, but you can't predict that several of the TSM main fraggers are going to have problems fragging today, and that Hot and Cold is going to be perfect. He's going to be playing Perfect Siege. He is currently playing Perfect Siege. You know, I'm not saying he can. I'm not saying he can keep doing that. Most players can't keep it up all the time, but he's having a day. And when you have a combination of someone having a day like this, and then several players on the other team just not having a good day, I mean, this is what you get: 20 kills, and I mean, we're just about done here.
I mean, unless they throw this round, there's no way he's going to break that regular record. So he'll look for some more, though, and he's got Merc in his sights. A Jiggle Peek will spell the doom of the sledge, and there you go. Nicely done. Only a tiny bit of damage to SSG thus far. Achieve turns around. There's another for Hot and Cold. Is a 4K up? No. Merc says 21's as much as you're going to get. But Bosco says, that's fine. We'll take the 3 points anyway. A big victory from Spacestation over TSM, as a 7-3 scoreline is about as dominant as you can get with 2 teams this evenly matched.
A big win for SSG indeed, Parker, and a big smile on Hotten's face. I don't know if you saw it earlier. He doesn't always smile. When he does, it's a beautiful sight to see. I mean, Hot and Cold. Hot and Cold, Hot and Cold. About 90% of those rounds won by Spacestation were, you guessed it, Hot and Cold. A 3K or a 4K in each of those, in every single one except for one, Parker. I think it was 1 round where Hot got like a single kill and SSG still won. Every other round, he got a 3K or a 4K. Like, what more can you say?
If memory serves me correctly, Michael, and obviously there's a lot more to it, and I apologize for the fans of Spacestation who want us to focus on all the other players, but today was very much a firmly 1v9 in every sense of the word. There were 2 4Ks for Houghton that I can count, 2 3Ks from Houghton as well that I can count. That means that 18 of his 21 kills came in 4 rounds. That is a staggeringly high number, and a lot of those rounds weren't done as a primary entry. Hot and Cold on attack was playing that supplementary hard breach role on Maverick. He was making space with the grenades, but he was on utility clear, and he was also on hard breach duty. On defense, he was mostly playing flex support close to the bomb site. He wasn't a roamer, and he wasn't the main adversary that the entries on TSM have to deal with. So honestly, that makes it even more impressive, Michael, that Hot and Cold played this way. But I mean, the analysts have a lot to dig into, and Hot and Cold's going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, he certainly will be. But that's it for Parker and I. We'll go ahead and toss to a break before we get back to the analyst desk.
What does it take to call next? Follow us for a deep dive into the Rainbow Six community, breaking down barriers, taking you behind the scenes, and showing what it means to level up.
If you want to get better, try reviewing your game footage. Insights.gg's game capture tool makes recording and reviewing fast and easy. With no lag, automatic recording, and instant highlights, it's never been easier to learn from your gameplay. Try it for free at insights.gg today.
welcome back to the NAL, and the replays are brought to us by our beautiful people over at Predator. Shout out to them and their laptops, but I mean, let's just call it what it is. We should just call them Hot and Never Cold, because Hot and Cold and the rest of the Space Boys dismantled TSM on Oregon. And Jesse and Jacob, I'm gonna need to hear your thoughts right now, because Spacestation Gaming are looking good, and TSM on the other end looked like they were struggling against Spacestation's star player.
Look, I thought it was going to be two Titans of North America. I didn't think our first game of the day was going to see Hot and Cold be 1 kill away from setting or equaling the North American League kill record. I didn't think that's where we'd be. Look at that, 21-5 for Hot and Cold. Kills were being funneled to him the entire way, especially on defense. That's not supposed to happen. TSM can't allow that to happen.
Yeah, Hot and Cold, we said he was 8-0 on entry. Make it 12-0 on entry now. That is ridiculous. So congrats to Hot and Cold. Congrats to SSG as well for officially being the second team qualifying to the North American League 2022 season. They are now officially safe from relegation. It's not that they were likely to get relegated anyways, but we can say that confirmed now.
And the Space Boys spanked them like they forgot to take the chicken out the freezer. I mean, take a look at the calls right now. Rampy with 100, Bosco with 90, Han Ko with the godly stats. But it's not only that, fellas. The opening kills to death ratio. Jacob, this is so lopsided. This is like a men amongst children when it comes to those entry stats.
No, it genuinely is. Just look at how many opening kills there are. Merc was the only person on TSM that managed to get any opening kills, but it was a streak of 8 rounds in a row for Spacestation. Right. Even on attack and defense, they found some way to find the opening pick. And like we mentioned before this match even started, they have a 75% conversion rate whenever they get that opening frag. So anytime you see SSG open up the kill feed with a slay of their own, then that's a pretty darn good indicator of how they'll be able to convert that into a round victory. And we'll go back and get the stat for it later, but I know that it's only going to improve that 75 percentile.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about opening kill stats for SSG, this has always been their strong point. I mean, so far in the NAL, they are the best team at getting the opening pick with a 55% win rate this stage. Then you go back to last stage, they had a 56% opening pick rate in stage 2, which was the second best in the league. You can go all the way back to stage 1, where they had a ridiculous 65% opening pick rate, and that was the best in the league. I assume this is going to bump it up to probably the high 50s, if not in the 60s already, for the rate they're getting that opening pick. So, I mean, this is classic SSG stuff. What more did you expect?
You know what I didn't expect? I didn't expect to see the Warden ban at the beginning, Jesse.
Yeah.
And now I want to hear from you as well, because you said the first 2 rounds were so influential when it came to Ying. So what are a few things that you picked up from that?
So, I mean, the Ying play, I think, was obviously the entire game plan for Space Station's attacks. Everything they did really revolved around this Ying. And so the Warden ban was huge to be able to make sure that one of Ying's biggest counter, if not her biggest counter in the entire game, was taken out of the pool. And then, of course, the way they push with this Ying consistently every single round, it was a lot of sort of one-pronged push, right? They were all usually funneling one direction. There was very little flanking coming in from the attack. There was very little sort of pressure coming in on the other side of the bomb site, but they really put everything in on the Ying. They brought a lot of explosives to try to back that up, so they would make that space. They would burn ADSs, whether that was with flashbangs or with explosives. They would burn out magnets. They would destroy shields, and then they would go with those Candelas time and time again. And I mean, it really was their favorite tool to use, and it got them so many opening kills, even if it wasn't Bosco getting those picks. Oftentimes it was feeding Hot and Cold, it was feeding Rampy, it was helping the rest of these players get those picks. And so that was the biggest factor, I'd say, in that first half.
Seeing how good they were doing with their tools, Jesse, it brought me back to the utility dump meta, where Space Station was just dumping on people. And
we don't want to revisit that point of history, though. We don't want to go back there.
Now, Jacob, let's visit this. Let's revisit the rankings and how things are standing so far in the NAL. Now, this loss for TSM is big. They've lost to what, their 3rd top 4 team so far this stage.
Yeah.
What does this ultimately mean right now?
TSM are in a really big problematic hole at the minute. They haven't gone that far down in the standings yet. If we have a second to look at it in terms of how they've all shaken up, we do see SSG actually at this point, I believe they won their tiebreaker over OXG from last week, so SSG actually should be catapulted up into first place now. But TSM, 2 wins, 3 losses overall. They are hanging on to 4th place by a thread. Beast Coast or Dark Zero, or those two, or very capable of vaulting over TSM into that 4th place position, and it's mostly because of the way that TSM have taken their attacks. Both of the wins that they've gotten so far, hey, there we go, SSG in 1st place. TSM are on the precipice of not making it to the November Major and subsequently to the North American League Finals. They are very, very close because of what they've done with this role change and their complete lack of attacking consistency to not being able to be considered within that top 4, maybe even that top 5 if this kind of performance continues, Valley.
This is absolutely nuts. All right, Jesse, any final thoughts at all, man? Let's be real, okay? Yeah, Spacestation Gaming did frog you over Oxygen, but the way they're looking right now, I didn't expect this on Oregon, man.
I mean, it's 3 games in a row for SSG, 2 of those 3 games coming on Oregon. I don't think we can really talk about Oregon as a bad map for SSG anymore. Like, that conversation should be over. So, I mean, this is one of their playgrounds. And I said at the start of this matchup, like, both these teams are 7 map teams. They will play anything in the pool, and I think SSG are just showing that here, that they can play anything. I mean, in terms of TSM, they're a little bit slipping for sure, but I don't think that they have to worry too much about, like, being in the bottom, like, relegation or anything like that. Really, they're fighting for that major spot, and they've got to have better answers to things like Ying strategies if they want to get into that top 4 and stay there.
Yeah, by the way, I was just thinking about the match. The funniest part was Chala catching an impact frag to his face. But the community poll question, if you guys follow us on Twitter, and you definitely should, by the way, was with Rampy and Merc both top 5 in the league for kills per round, who will nab the most kills today? Now, walking into this matchup, Jacob, what were you thinking, man? Because me personally, I would side with Rampy. Rampy has been crazy lately.
It was a really hard one to call before the game started because Rampy and Merc, I believe, were ranked 5th and 6th overall, respectively. Rampy was 5th, Merc was 6th, and that's just from a ratings point of view. But I think after a game like this, and also given the fact that Merc was tied for 2nd most kills with Grixer before this game even started, I think a lot of people might have given Merc the slide here.
Oh, by the way, Jesse, when you answer this as well, I think it's fair with both of these players if you can guess who actually won the popularity contest, because
I mean, it's TSM and Twitter polls, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, TSM doesn't lose, but I'd probably pick Rampy here, and I think he did end up with more kills. Don't quote me on that. We'll see.
All right, so the winner was actually TSM losing 45-55.
Wow.
And Rampy from Spacestation Gaming won that poll. Like I said, 2 very popular players, right? But Jacob, you're right. TSM, you really don't want to bet on them. But fellas, coming up next, we actually have Beast Coast versus the Sonics. Now, this is going to be a really interesting matchup because for those of you that's been following this stage so far, the bottom half of the teams and Beast Coast, they're currently there. They've made a team change during the offseason, and they're really trying to work their way up. Now, can they strike and get an upset in this upcoming series? It's only a matter of time until we find out. So we'll catch you guys on the other side of this break for some more Rainbow Six North American League action.